Brenda walked into the kitchen, the stale coffee smell hitting her first. Her conference smile faded when she saw the full-color printout on the counter. Earl Jensen's arm around her waist. Beneath it, a stack of divorce papers, a 30-day eviction notice. The house felt empty, hollow. "Time to pack, darling," Hank's voicemail echoed from her phone, a final, chilling whisper. Brenda Miller would be landing about now, the plane's wheels kissing the tarmac in Detroit. Her flight from Minneapolis was always on schedule. She'd expect a normal homecoming, the scent of a cooked meal perhaps, or at least the promise of one. Our suburban Michigan home, a place we'd picked out together, would be waiting. The lawn freshly cut, the hydrangeas by the porch blooming purple. Everything looking just as it should. But it wouldn't be normal. Not this time. 30,000 feet up, the hum of the jet engine a dull throb in my ears, I imagined her walking through the front door. Her carry-on bag dropped by the coat rack. Keys tossed onto the console table. She'd call out my name, maybe a little tired, maybe a little expectant. Then she'd make her way to the kitchen, the heart of the home, where she'd find the truth laid bare. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could picture the exact moment. The way her eyes would fix on the counter, then narrow. It was a full-color printout, crisp and undeniable. Brenda, smiling wide, her arm linked with Earl Jensen's. My boss. His hand rested low on her back, a familiar, intimate gesture. Another photo showed them at what looked like a resort bar, laughing with a couple of other suits I recognized from the quarterly regional meetings. Just business, she'd always said. Just networking. The kind of networking that involved late nights and shared hotel rooms. I'd included timestamps, locations, and the names of the establishments. There was no room for doubt, no wiggle room for an explanation. Beneath the glossy photo, weighted down by a salt shaker, lay the stack of papers. The divorce petition, neatly filed, already served to her by proxy through my attorney. Then a copy of our prenuptial agreement, its clauses clear and unbending. And finally, the 30-day eviction notice. It was all there, the sum total of our 2 years. Clean, concise, legal. I'd made sure of it. My name is Hank Miller. I'm 27 years old, a year younger than Brenda, an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. It was a good job, steady, the kind of work that demanded precision and a certain quiet focus. I didn't need to work, not really. My parents, bless their hearts, had done well. My grandfather had done even better in plastics manufacturing. By the time I turned 18, a substantial trust fund kicked in, enough to live comfortably, more than comfortably, for the rest of my life. But comfort wasn't the point. My father always said a man needed purpose, something to get him out of bed in the morning, besides the promise of another expensive cup of coffee. He'd worked his tail off, built on what his father started, expanded the family business into new markets. My mother, a former teacher, believed in the dignity of a dollar earned. So I worked, learned how to manage finances, how to find the errors, how to make the numbers balance. It kept my mind sharp, kept me grounded. It felt right, an honest day's effort. I met Brenda at a bar downtown, a place with loud music and sticky floors. A casual Friday night. She was with friends, laughing, confident. I liked that about her. We talked for hours that night, about nothing and everything. She was a marketing director, sharp and ambitious. There was an easy energy between us, a shared sense of humor. We talked about future trips, old movies, the kind of small, intimate details that felt like the start of something real. Money never came up. Not really. I drove a decent car, lived in a nice apartment, but I didn't flaunt anything. She seemed to like me for me, or so I thought. Our early relationship was all good times. Weekend trips up north, dinners out, lazy Sundays. We shared a bottle of wine on my porch more often than not. Everything felt effortless. 2 years flew by, and then we were married. The wedding was modest, just close family and friends. Brenda said she didn't need a spectacle, just me. We talked about kids, a couple of them, maybe a boy and a girl. We'd even started looking at houses, picturing a swing set in the backyard. It all felt so solid, so planned. Looking back, the work conferences were probably the first crack in the foundation. Little trips out of state, always a different city. Minneapolis this week, Chicago the next. She'd come back tired, a little distant, but always with a new story, a fresh anecdote about the industry, and I'd believed her, each time. The announcement came during our Tuesday morning team meeting, the air already thick with the scent of stale coffee from the break room. Earl Jensen, one of the firm's senior partners, cleared his throat and tapped his pen against a legal pad. "Folks," he began, his voice booming, a little too loud for the small conference room, "I'll be out of the office for a while, 3 weeks, maybe a little more, starting Monday. Important client acquisition." He offered no specifics, no city, no project name, just a vague wave of his hand towards the general direction of opportunity. It struck me as odd. Earl was meticulous, usually detailing every strategic move. This trip, however, felt shrouded. That same morning, over scrambled eggs and toast, Brenda had delivered her news. "My turn to hit the road next week, hun," she said, stirring her coffee. "Another big conference. 3 weeks this time, the national convention. Minneapolis first, then a few satellite meetings in Chicago." She looked up, her smile bright. "Big push for Q3. Need to bring in those new accounts." I remember thinking it was a strange coincidence. Both of us having significant others gone for 3 weeks, almost overlapping. But I didn't dwell on it. Brenda's work involved travel. My boss's work involved travel. The world was bigger than our Michigan suburb. I trusted Brenda. We'd built something solid, or so I believed. It was just a curious twist of fate, nothing more. A quick thought that flitted in and out of my mind, like a fly buzzing past a window pane. Later that week, Sally Johnson, one of our younger interns, found me by the water cooler. Sally was 22, fresh out of college, always buzzing with an eager, almost childlike enthusiasm. She handled the small tasks, filed the invoices, always with a bright, "Good morning, Mr. Miller." But that afternoon, she didn't offer a greeting. Her face was pale, her usual bouncy ponytail limp. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She looked around the busy office, then back at me. Could I talk to you for a moment privately? I've always considered myself a decent judge of character. You learn to read people in this business, to see the tells in their eyes when the numbers don't add up." Sally's face held a look I recognized, one I'd only seen a few times in my life. When my grandfather passed, when my mother told me she'd lost her job, when my dog was hit by a car. It was the look of someone bearing an unbearable weight, someone about to deliver news that would change everything, the kind of solemnity that presses down on you, still and heavy. My stomach tightened, a first faint tremor of unease. "Of course, Sally," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Is everything all right?" She shook her head, not quite meeting my gaze. "Not here," she whispered. "Could we maybe go somewhere else? There's a sandwich shop, Miller's Deli, across town. It's usually quiet around lunch." The specificity, the insistence on leaving the office, it all added to the growing knot in my gut. I told her I could take an early lunch, and we arranged to meet in 20 minutes. The drive felt longer than it was, the midday traffic a blur around me. Every red light seemed to hold me hostage, delaying the inevitable. At Miller's Deli, the booths were mostly empty. We ordered 2 turkey subs, then sat in silence until they arrived. Sally peeled the paper from her sandwich, then hesitated, her fingers hovering over the bread. She reached across the small table, her hand almost brushing mine, then pulled back sharply as if scalded. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, looking down at her plate. This is going to be very hard, Mr. Miller." My appetite vanished. That icy dread I'd felt earlier began to spread slowly through my chest, down into my limbs. It wasn't the heat of anger, not yet. It was a cold, creeping certainty that something was fundamentally wrong. My gut clenched tight, a physical response to an unseen blow. I knew with a sudden, chilling clarity that whatever Sally was about to say, it wasn't good. It would unravel something. "I overheard Earl talking," she began, her voice still quiet, almost ashamed. "A few days ago, he was on the phone talking about his trip. He kept saying he was going to be entertaining everyone, and it sounded off, not like business." She paused, took a deep breath. "So I know this sounds crazy, Mr. Miller, but I got a bad feeling. And I saw him at the airport getting on a flight to Minneapolis, and I bought a ticket, a last-minute one. I followed him. Her eyes finally met mine, wide and full of a desperate honesty. He wasn't alone, and he wasn't just with other men. There was a woman. I took pictures, a lot of pictures. Sally fumbled with her phone, her fingers shaking slightly. She turned the screen towards me, holding it steady. The image filled my vision. It was Brenda, my wife, laughing, her head thrown back, a drink in her hand, and Earl Jensen, his arm possessively around her waist, his face too close to hers. In the background, two other men, their faces indistinct but clearly part of the same group. The scene was unmistakably intimate, not business, not even close. My world didn't just tilt, it imploded. A cold, nauseating lurch in my stomach. The smell of the deli's roasted turkey that suddenly turned rancid. My throat constricted, dry and tight. It was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me breathless. I couldn't process it, not really. My mind tried to reject the image, to rationalize it, but the clarity of the photograph was too sharp, too brutal. Brenda's eyes, her genuine laugh, the way she leaned into Earl, it was all there. I recognized her, Sally stammered, her voice small. From the wedding photo on your desk, Mr. Miller. I couldn't believe it. At first, I thought maybe it was just a strange coincidence, but then I kept watching and they were always together. Always like this. I sat there numb, the sounds of the deli fading into a distant hum. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My mind raced, trying to string together fragments, trying to make sense of the senseless. Brenda, Earl, my boss, the conferences, the vague trips. It was all clicking into place, a horrifying mosaic. A lawyer, I managed to rasp, the word barely audible. I need a lawyer. It was the standard Midwestern response to trouble, the instinct to call legal counsel, to find someone to fix it, a knee-jerk reaction born of habit. Sally shook her head, her expression grim. Mr. Miller, you might not want to do that, not yet. She swiped her finger across the screen, bringing up another photo. This one, even more jarring, even more impossible. Ray Davis, my lawyer. My family's lawyer for decades, my friend. He was in the picture too, standing next to Earl, a knowing smirk on his face, looking directly at Brenda, who was smiling back at him. The scene was from a different angle, clearly another moment of the same gathering. There are 5 of them, Sally whispered, her eyes wide with something akin to fear. Sometimes more, but always those 3, Earl, Brenda, and Mr. Davis. The air left my lungs in a ragged gasp. Ray Davis, the man who handled my trust, who drew up my prenuptial agreement, who I'd considered a trusted advisor. This wasn't just an affair, this was something else. A cold, calculated move. My chest tightened, a crushing panic beginning to spread. The betrayal wasn't a crack in the foundation, it was a gaping chasm, swallowing everything I thought I knew. It wasn't just Brenda, it was an organized effort. I don't know all the details, Sally continued, but I overheard snippets, bits and pieces. They were talking about you, Mr. Miller, about the trust, and about how the money should stay where it belongs. That's what Earl said just before he got on the plane. She looked at me, her expression pleading. I think they're trying to take your money. The words hit me like a revelation, a horrific, sickening light bulb moment. The pieces slotted together with brutal precision. The vague trips, the intimate photos, Ray Davis, the trust. It wasn't about love or even lust. It was about money. My money, the money my family had worked for generations to build. The cold, hard logic of it, the sheer audacity of the scheme pierced through the raw pain of betrayal. A fierce, unyielding determination began to simmer beneath the surface of my shock. They wanted to take what was mine. They wouldn't. I think I need to throw up, I mumbled, the nausea returning with a vengeance. But then I caught myself, pushing down the urge. There was no time for that. There was only time for action. Sally, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, I need you to go back to the office. Tell them I'm not feeling well. Tell them I'll be out for the rest of the day, And don't tell anyone, not a soul, about this. Can you do that? The first thing I did was find a new lawyer, not a lawyer my family knew, not someone within the usual Midwestern network of interconnected professionals. I needed someone outside, someone who wouldn't have any ties, direct or indirect, to Ray Davis or Earl Jensen. I asked around discreetly through an old college friend who worked in commercial real estate. He gave me a name, Patricia Patty Donovan. Her reputation was that of a bulldog, tough and unyielding, a no-nonsense type who didn't waste time on pleasantries but got results. I met Patty in her downtown office the next morning. It was sparse, functional, with a view of a brick wall. She listened, her face impassive, as I laid out the whole ugly story. Sally's photos, Earl Jensen's involvement, Brenda's complicity, and the chilling detail about Ray Davis. I told her about the trust fund, the prenuptial agreement, and the whispered motive about the money staying where it belongs. Patty didn't flinch. She just nodded, occasionally scribbling notes on a yellow legal pad. "It sounds like a coordinated effort, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice flat, devoid of judgment. "We'll treat it as such." Our first order of business was to initiate a deep dive into Brenda's finances. Every account, every transaction, every credit card statement. Patty advised me to do the same for Earl Jensen and the other men Sally had mentioned, Don Hayes, a regional sales manager from our firm, and Mike Stevens, a marketing executive from Brenda's company. We needed to trace the money to see if there were any unusual transfers, any joint accounts I didn't know about, any hidden assets. It would be slow, painstaking work, but essential. Sally, bless her heart, continued to be invaluable. Under the guise of researching new client acquisition strategies, she helped me secretly gather digital evidence, phone records, call logs, text messages that Brenda thought she'd deleted. She had access to certain firm systems, and with my guidance, we pulled Brenda's travel itineraries, cross-referencing them with Earl's. The coincidences piled up, no longer curious, but damning. We found emails, carefully worded, but hinting at shared trips and after-hours meetings. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to paint a very clear picture for anyone willing to look. While Patty's team started their formal investigation, I began the meticulous process of detaching my personal and business assets. I closed joint checking accounts, citing streamlining finances to Brenda over the phone, who was still away on her conference. I moved investments, transferred ownership of the vacation cabin into a separate holding entity, and ensured my car and other significant personal belongings were clearly under my sole ownership. It felt surgical, cold. Every action was a small cut, severing ties with someone I had once loved. Patty, meanwhile, began preparing the divorce petition. It wasn't just a standard irreconcilable differences filing. This would be comprehensive, detailing the infidelity and, crucially, the fraud. We would lay out the evidence piece by piece, leaving no doubt about the extent of Brenda's deception and her conspirators' intent. It would be a legal document designed to leave no escape hatch. I also drafted a carefully worded memo to the senior partners at my firm, detailing Earl Jensen's unethical conduct. I included copies of Sally's photos, the travel itineraries, and the communication logs. I didn't want to just fire him. I wanted to ensure he faced professional consequences. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about principle. My name was attached to that firm, my family's reputation. I needed to ensure that no one could question my integrity or my commitment to ethical practice. Sleep became a luxury. Most nights I sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the empty house a stark contrast to the frantic gears turning in my mind. I documented everything, every date, every phone call, every piece of evidence. I created spreadsheets, timelines, and flowcharts. The initial shock and the raw, gut-wrenching pain slowly receded, replaced by a cold, focused resolve. A quiet fury had settled deep within me, fueling every methodical step. This wasn't just about protecting my assets. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about showing them that I was not a pawn in their game. My trust fund was the crown jewel they were after. I met with my financial advisor, a man who had worked with my family for years, but who, crucially, operated independently of Ray Davis. I explained the situation, omitting only the specific names for now, saying I suspected an attempt at financial impropriety. We reviewed all the security protocols, adding new layers of protection, changing passwords, and implementing multi-factor authentication for any significant transaction. I made it bulletproof, or as close to it as possible. They wouldn't get a dime. For the next few weeks, I became a master of the mundane. At home, when Brenda returned from her extended conference, I greeted her with a practiced smile, inquired about her trip, and listened to her carefully rehearsed stories of networking triumphs. She saw me as a little quiet, perhaps, a little more focused on my work, but utterly oblivious. Earl Jensen, back in the office, occasionally offered a condescending pat on the shoulder, mistaking my silence for simple distraction, not simmering malice. I played the long game, letting them believe they were in control, allowing their scheme to continue unhindered. Every interaction was a performance, every word a careful calculation. My first priority was to solidify my financial fortress. I opened new bank accounts, exclusively in my name, with a different institution, transferring substantial funds away from any joint accounts Brenda still had access to. The investment properties I owned, a small commercial building, a couple of rental houses, were all reviewed, their deeds and management agreements secured under my sole control. Any loopholes that Brenda might have exploited were systematically closed. It was a tedious process, but necessary. Each document signed, each transfer completed, felt like another brick in a wall built to protect what was mine. Sally continued to be my eyes and ears inside the firm. Her loyalty was a stark contrast to the betrayal I faced elsewhere. She'd leave innocuous-looking files on my desk, containing snippets of emails, calendar entries, even whispered conversations she'd overheard. Information about Earl's travel arrangements, who he met with, which expense accounts were being tapped. She confirmed that Don Hayes, the regional sales manager, and Mike Stevens, Brenda's marketing executive, were indeed frequently intertwined in Earl's business dealings, their names appearing on shared expense reports and travel manifests. The web was intricate, but it was coming into focus. To ensure nothing was left to chance, I hired a private investigator. Not a flashy type, just a retired detective from the state police, known for his methodical approach. He specialized in corporate fraud, quiet surveillance. His task was to independently confirm Brenda's movements during her conferences, to provide irrefutable proof of her liaisons, documenting hotels, restaurant visits, and who she was with. I needed physical evidence, beyond Sally's phone photos. I needed to leave no room for denial, no crack for them to exploit. With Patty, my new lawyer, we devised a strategy for the public unveiling. It wouldn't be a messy tabloid affair. It would be precise, clinical. The goal was to expose the affair and the financial plot without jeopardizing my professional standing. We planned to present the evidence simultaneously to the firm's partners and in the divorce filing. Patty's counsel was clear. Don't get emotional, Hank. Just present the facts. Let the facts do the talking. That cold realism, it resonated with me. I also began to set up my own departure from the accounting firm. Earl's ethical breaches would lead to his termination. That was clear. But the firm's reputation would take a hit. I didn't want to be associated with that fallout. I quietly updated my resume, reached out to a few headhunters, and explored opportunities elsewhere. The plan was to ensure a clean break, minimal professional damage, and a swift transition once the dust settled. I had too much invested in my career to let their avarice destroy it. At home, during Brenda's long days at her own office, I began to remove my personal belongings. Not just clothes, but the irreplaceable things. My grandfather's pocket watch, a collection of first edition novels, old photo albums, my father's hunting knife, sentimental items, things that couldn't be replaced. I packed them carefully into boxes, storing them at my parents' house. Each item removed was a severing of another tie to the life I'd shared with Brenda, a tangible act of detachment. The house slowly became less ours and more hers. As the days turned into weeks, the meticulous plotting, the constant vigilance, the calculated deception, it all took its toll. A profound sense of loneliness settled over me, a heavy Midwestern quietness. There was no one I could truly confide in, no one to share the burden. This was my fight, and I was utterly alone in it. I knew the cost of this revenge would be steep, demanding a certain solitude. But I was prepared to pay it, stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The day finally arrived. Earl Jensen, with a casual nod and a "see you in a few weeks, Hank," departed for what he thought was another clandestine rendezvous. Brenda, after a perfunctory peck on my cheek and a murmur about a heavy workload ahead, left for her own synchronized 3-week business trip to Minneapolis and Chicago. They thought they were off to continue their deceit, oblivious that they were merely stepping into the carefully laid trap I had spent months constructing. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest, a cold certainty guiding my hands. I started at the office. First, I went to my printer. The machine hummed, spitting out page after page of irrefutable evidence. Sally's photos, blown up to full-page size, showing Brenda and Earl, often with Don Hayes and Mike Stevens, in various compromising situations. Hotel bills, showing overlapping stays in the same cities at the same times. My meticulously organized financial statements, highlighting suspicious transfers and withdrawals. The call logs, connecting Brenda's conference calls with Earl's private number. It was a thick dossier, each page a testament to their betrayal. I compiled it all into a folder, the kind with clear plastic covers, making it easily presentable. Then, back at our shared penthouse apartment, I moved to the kitchen counter. I took the printed evidence and arranged it precisely. The most damning photo, Brenda with Earl, front and center. Beneath it, the stack of documents, the divorce papers, the prenup, the eviction notice. I'd added a short impersonal cover letter typed and printed, stating that all further communication should go through my attorney, Patricia Donovan. No handwritten notes, no emotional outbursts, just the cold, hard facts. It was a scene carefully curated, designed to deliver maximum impact with minimal effort on my part. Next, I systematically cleared out my life from the apartment. All my clothes, my books, the few pieces of art I'd bought, every personal item that wasn't legally Brenda's. I had already moved the valuable heirlooms. This was the final sweep. The apartment began to feel sterile, impersonal, stripped of any vestige of my presence. It became her space, devoid of me. I left her things exactly where they were, a silent testament to the life she would now face alone. The only thing of mine that remained was the apartment itself for 30 more days. A locksmith was scheduled. He would arrive an hour after Brenda's flight was due to land, precisely when she'd be making her way home. The locks would be changed, the access codes reset. She wouldn't be able to just walk back in. She would face the confrontation, the truth, and the locked door. All at once. It was a small detail, but a crucial one. It symbolized the finality of my decision. Before leaving the firm for good, I personally delivered my letter of resignation to the senior partners. It was a thick envelope containing not only my resignation, but also a comprehensive report detailing Earl Jensen's misconduct, complete with supporting evidence. I included copies of the photos, the financial irregularities, and the ethical breaches. I didn't want whispers. I wanted concrete proof. I looked them in the eye, explained that I couldn't be associated with such behavior. They looked stunned, their faces paling as they flipped through the pages. Then I executed the final legal step. Copies of all the evidence, along with formal complaints, were couriered to the relevant professional ethics boards for both Earl Jensen and Ray Davis, the State Bar Association, the Accountants Professional Ethics Committee. Their professional lives would be scrutinized, their reputations shattered. It wasn't enough to divorce Brenda. The architects of the scheme needed to face the consequences of their actions. With everything set, the trap sprung. I picked up my pre-booked tickets. My destination was a small cabin in northern Michigan, a place where cell service was spotty and the silence was profound. I boarded the flight, not looking back. As the plane climbed, leaving the familiar city lights behind, a wave of quiet exhaustion washed over me. It was done. A fleeting sense of vindication settled in, cold and distant, immediately followed by an immense emptiness. The silence of my victory was almost deafening. Brenda's flight landed right on schedule. She was tired, the 3 weeks of networking and late nights catching up to her. but a part of her looked forward to returning to the familiar comfort of our suburban Michigan apartment. She imagined kickstarting a normal evening, maybe ordering takeout, recounting a sanitized version of her trip. That comforting predictability, it was what she always came home to. She fumbled with her keys, let herself in, and the apartment's silence hit her first. No lights on, no sound of the television, no scent of anything cooking. "Hank?" she called out, her voice echoing in the quiet. The usual hum of the refrigerator seemed unnaturally loud. A prickle of unease started, a feeling that something was off, but she pushed it down. Hank was probably just in the office late or out for a run. She walked into the kitchen, dropping her carry-on by the door, and that's when she saw it. On the counter, beneath the stark fluorescent light, was the full-color printout. Her blood ran cold. The image was of her, laughing, her arm around Earl Jensen. The smile on her face, the way she leaned into him, was undeniable. The casual intimacy, the kind she usually reserved for me. Her mind raced, a frantic scramble for an explanation, a way to dismiss it. But then her eyes moved to the other figures in the background. Don Hayes, Mike Stevens, faces she knew, faces she had shared more than just business with. Her face drained of color, leaving a sickly pallor. Beneath the damning photos lay the stack of papers. The top one, petition for divorce. Below that, the dreaded prenup, its clauses clear and unbending, detailing the financial consequences of infidelity. And finally, a 30-day eviction notice. Each document hit her like a physical blow, a calculated assault on everything she thought she had. The careful arrangement, the cold, impersonal presentation, screamed of a meticulous, deliberate act. My act. Panic set in. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy, her heart hammering against her ribs. She dialed my number in urgent need to explain, to deny, to somehow salvage this collapsing edifice. But the phone didn't ring. It went straight to voicemail. "The subscriber you are trying to reach is unavailable," a robotic female voice announced. She tried again. Same result. My cold, arrogant voicemail message from earlier, the one about packing, played through her head. Then she hurried to the front door, a desperate attempt to flee, to somehow escape the scene. She grabbed her keys, inserted the house key into the lock, and turned. It wouldn't budge. She tried again, harder this time, twisting and jiggling. Nothing. The lock was different. The key she'd used for years was now useless. The realization hit her, sharp and final. The locks had been changed. The apartment, the life she'd walked away from for 3 weeks of deceit, was no longer hers to simply re-enter. The full weight of my meticulous revenge crashed down on her. The slow, creeping dread. The sickening certainty that she had been outmaneuvered, outplayed. My quiet demeanor, my seemingly clueless distraction, it had all been a mask. Every polite question about her trip, every casual conversation, had been a calculated deception. She was trapped, cornered, and utterly exposed. She started frantically dialing other numbers. Earl Jensen, Ray Davis, Don Hayes, Mike Stevens, her co-conspirators, her partners in crime. One by one, their calls either went straight to voicemail or rang endlessly, unanswered. They were gone. Silenced, she was alone. The cold silence of the apartment seemed to magnify her panic, echoing the hollowness of her situation. It was stripped bare, not just of my personal belongings, but of any shared warmth, any pretense of a future we once had. Just her, the photos, and the papers. The fallout from my actions was swift and widespread, like ripples across a still lake. News of Earl Jensen's professional misconduct, his blatant ethical breaches, and his involvement in a scheme to defraud a client rocked the accounting firm. The partners, scrambling to contain the damage, moved quickly. Earl was terminated, effective immediately, his professional licenses put under review by the state board. His carefully built career crumbled overnight. Ray Davis, my erstwhile friend and family lawyer, faced even graver consequences. The evidence I provided to the State Bar Association was irrefutable. His unethical involvement, the conflict of interest, the sheer audacity of conspiring against the client led to swift disbarment proceedings. His name, once respected, became synonymous with deceit. He vanished from the legal circles, his reputation in tatters. Don Hayes and Mike Stevens, the other conspirators in the photos, also suffered. My firm quickly severed ties with Don, and news of his involvement reached his new employer, resulting in his termination. Mike Stevens faced similar professional ruin. Their careers, their social standing, everything they had carefully constructed, collapsed under the weight of the scandal. Reputations are hard to build in the Midwest, and even harder to rebuild once shattered. Brenda, true to form, attempted to contest the divorce and the eviction. She hired a new lawyer, a sharp-tongued litigator who promised to fight for her. But Patty Donovan, my lawyer, was more than ready. The overwhelming, irrefutable evidence I had meticulously amassed, the photos, the financial records, the travel itineraries, the documented phone calls, left her no room to maneuver. Each piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of her defense. Her lawyer, after reviewing the mountain of proof, quickly realized the futility of their position. There was no defense against such precision. Her attempts to access any joint assets or, more importantly, to touch a single penny of my trust fund were met with impenetrable walls. My foresight, my quiet detachment of assets, and the fortified security around the trust fund proved impenetrable. Every account was locked down, every investment secured. She found herself financially crippled, exactly as the prenup stipulated, stripped of the comfort and wealth she had so eagerly sought to steal. The media, always hungry for a scandal involving high-profile professionals and a tale of betrayal, caught wind of the story. Local newspapers ran front-page articles. Online news sites buzzed with the details. The respectable individuals involved made it a sensational story. Brenda found herself at the center of a very public, very humiliating downfall. She became isolated, professionally ostracized, her social circle shrinking to nothing. The price for her greed, her deception, was laid bare for everyone to see. My name, in contrast, was cleared. The firm, after the initial shock, issued a statement acknowledging my integrity and expressing regret over Earl Jensen's actions. While the story of my quiet, effective vengeance spread, it evoked a mixture of sympathy for my betrayal and a grudging awe for the methodical way I had dismantled their scheme. I was no longer perceived as merely the wealthy heir. I was Hank Miller, a man who protected what was his. Sally Johnson, the bright young intern who had risked so much, was justly rewarded. Her integrity was publicly praised by the firm's senior partners. She was offered a full-time position, a significant promotion, and a new mentor. Her career, which could have been jeopardized by her actions, instead soared. She became a symbol of honesty in a sea of deceit. The legal battles, though protracted and emotionally draining, eventually concluded. My divorce was finalized, the prenuptial agreement enforced. Brenda left with nothing but the clothes on her back and the tarnished remnants of her reputation. I emerged from the ruins financially intact, my trust fund secure, my assets protected. But the cost was undeniable. The emotional scars ran deep, a quiet ache that lingered, a constant reminder of the profound betrayal. The dust, both literal and metaphorical, eventually settled. I sold the penthouse apartment in the city, severing the last tangible link to that chapter of my life. I didn't want to live there anymore, surrounded by ghosts and memories of what once was. Instead, I moved north to a smaller, quieter Midwestern town, nestled amidst rolling farmlands and dense forests, a place where the biggest scandal was usually a contested zoning variance, not a widespread conspiracy. I needed a fresh start, a different horizon. The cost of my revenge was immense. Financially, I was intact, my assets more secure than ever. But emotionally, the wounds lingered. The quiet satisfaction of seeing justice served was always tempered by the memory of the betrayal. It wasn't a triumphant feeling, more like a dull ache, a phantom limb reminding me of what was lost. The person I was before Brenda, before Earl, before all of it, was gone, replaced by someone harder, more guarded. The memories of Brenda, her laugh, her fake smiles still surfaced sometimes. Earl's booming voice, Ray Davis's conniving smirk. They appeared unbidden, fleeting shadows. But the raw, agonizing pain had dulled. It had transmuted into a quiet resolve, a steely understanding of human nature's darker side. I wasn't consumed by it anymore. It was simply a part of my history, a lesson learned in the harshest possible way. Now, authenticity and trust were paramount. I formed new relationships cautiously, slowly. The open-hearted approach I once had was replaced by a discerning eye, a heightened sensitivity to subtle cues. I learned to watch, to listen, to truly see people before letting them into my inner circle. Small, genuine connections, built on shared interests and mutual respect, meant more to me than any superficial glitz. I valued honesty above everything else. My experience profoundly altered my understanding of money. It wasn't just a means to live comfortably. It was a magnet, a catalyst for greed, a weapon in the wrong hands. I understood the difference between simply having wealth and being manipulated, targeted for it. The trust fund, once a background comfort, now felt like a responsibility, something to be protected, managed with wisdom and integrity, never again taken for granted. I found a new purpose, something beyond the cold calculations of an accounting firm. I started quietly engaging in philanthropy, supporting local charities, investing in community projects. I mentored young entrepreneurs, helping them navigate the complexities of finance, sharing not just knowledge but also the hard-won wisdom about integrity and ethics. It felt right, a way to channel my experiences into something positive, to build rather than just dismantle. The quiet solitude, which had been a heavy burden during the months of plotting, slowly transformed. It became a space for healing, for self-discovery. Long walks in the woods, hours spent reading, the simple rhythm of a smaller town life. It allowed me to reflect, to process, to slowly put myself back together. I found a certain peace in the stillness, a comfort in my own company. I often reflected on the moral ambiguity of my actions. Was it justice or merely revenge? Had I lowered myself to their level? I didn't have easy answers. I believed I had done what was necessary, protected what was mine, and exposed corruption. But the cost was personal. The person I once was, a little naive, a little too trusting, was gone forever. That was the price. I accepted that some scars would remain, a permanent reminder of the price of betrayal and of the quiet strength it took to fight back. They weren't ugly scars, not anymore. They were marks of survival, testaments to resilience. Life moved forward, a little wiser, a little harder, but with a clearer view of the world and my place in it. The horizon was scarred, yes, but it was also clear.